Welcome back to The Rebel's Edge. Marc LoPresti and I are going to break down for you the top 3 AI stocks that you wish you had in your portfolio in 2023 and why they're still going to be great in 2024. Welcome, Marc. It's great to have you. As regular viewers of the show know, number one, that is not Pete Najarian. That is Marc LoPresti. And number two, Marc has been doing a fabulous job, yeoman's work, being on the show, sharing his insights, and insights not just gathered from Marc as a trader, folks, which he was on the New York Stock Exchange and for some big Wall Street firms, but also as he has considerable insights into legal issues that may pop up from time to time with some of these stocks. He was a practicing attorney for a better part of what, Marc, 15 years?
Closer to 20, but you've left out a lot of my other superpowers that I think are far more interesting, John. We don't have time for that because this is, of course, the Rebel's Edge New Year's edition. We got to mark these milestones in life. There we go. We got the Bulls and the Bears dancing for the end of the year. Not quite the last trading day of the year, but folks, as you know, of course, this is the last day for Rebel's Edge of 2023. And John, it is my honor and pleasure to address the Market Rebellion, Rebel Nation, as I love to call them. And yes, Pete told me he is coming back off the beach. He's not staying down there in the islands. He is going to be returning in the new year. So let's get at it with the Macro Minute, John.
Let's do it. Macro Minute, folks. We always start the show with the Macro Minute, the Rebel's Edge, that is. The markets are kind of mixed. The Dow is up 60 or so. NASDAQ's up 25. The Russell's down a little. And why is it all going on like that? Well, maybe because interest rates aren't as much of a focus right now. They're basically flat, which we haven't been able to say much lately. It's been more of an issue where they're going down rather than interest rates going up, which is a good thing, right, Marc?
Yeah, absolutely, John. And I thought for today's Macro Minute, with the 30 seconds or so we have left, can we share some New Year's resolutions for traders out there? I mean, I've got a couple off the top of my head. Shorten your swing, discipline dictates action, DDA that you and Pete always talk about. If you subscribe to Your Unusual, read those updates when those emails and text messages come in. Read a book. I've got one in mind. It's not an option. Written by 2 people that you all may be familiar with. But anything that I may have missed, John, in terms of resolutions to make our friends and viewers better traders in 2024?
Well, you named the top ones, really, Marc. Discipline with DDA, discipline dictates action, as well as getting a copy of that free book, because you can get it for free, folks, if you go to itsnotanoption.com. You'll get it for free, mailed out to you, and it is a great book. I love to say that, Marc, but that's what the feedback has been so far. So yeah. Once you get a free copy and then tell me, no, you were wrong, this didn't help me, I think instead you'll look at it, read it, and say, this did help me a lot. And if it's free, as Tommy DeVito is famous for motioning, Marc, if it's free, it's money in the bank. Well, let's talk about fantastic futures. I know.
Fantastic futures.
Did you see futures, man? Just went across the screen.
I love that.
That is awesome. Well done, Jared. Well done.
Thank you, Jared. Thank you. I would say, Marc, right now, it's still an issue, the fact that Russia's pipeline was blown up by somebody, but I still can't come up with a single reason why Russia would do it, Marc. And there's a fair amount of evidence that they didn't. But anyway, let's talk about something we can trade. Natural gas. If we get any kind of a cold spell, and we've said this repeatedly last year as well as this year, natural gas is a product that, yes, you can ship it and liquefy it and ship it, more or less LNG. But other than that, with that pipeline out, they are in a world of hurt if they get a cold winter over there, Mark. So it's up 5% today. Maybe that's a little prophetic move by some of these traders. What do you think, Mark?
Yeah, listen, it could be, although, I'm kind of bearish on that gas going into 2024, John, because the weather, we started with a very mild winter, both here and in Europe, that's expected to continue. The El Nino pattern already in full effect, even here in the Northeast, mild weather, rain like we have today. I don't know that I'm going to be hitting the buy button on that BOIL, which is, by the way, my favorite when I'm feeling bullish about nat gas. I sometimes smash that buy button on that BOIL ETF. That's an ultra levered, 3x levered on nat gas futures. But that is one of those instruments that your broker makes you sign an additional disclosure statement saying, you're a little bit crazy if you buy this 3x leverage thing because it'll whipsaw. But man, we've made some good money on that one. But I'm not feeling so bullish on nat gas.
All right. Well, that's what makes a market, folks. And we shall see. I think Mark makes some great points, though. The winter certainly has not been cold. It was not cold last year, significantly below average or anything in Europe. And they're the ones, we have pipelines here. They don't anymore in Europe. So that's the issue over there. We'll see how quickly things stay the same or how quickly they change. Now, Mark, let's talk about AI, artificial intelligence, because PwC, one of the big, big three or big four now? It used to be a whole bunch more than that. But one of the big three sees it as a $15.7 trillion global gross domestic product by 2030. That is a huge number, 15.7 trillion. And Mark and I, as advertised, we have three stocks. We'll each talk about each of them, but I'll start off with China-based Baidu, Mark, BIDU, because they are the number 2 search engine in the world. Not a lot of people know that. A lot of people know you can do things with their e-commerce side of Baidu, but did you know it's the second largest search engine? And AI is going to help them grow that, Mark, and perhaps even threaten Google.
Yeah, that is true. It is a Chinese stock, which is all the stuff associated from a risk perspective with the involvement of Chinese government. We talked about that yesterday. But AI is definitely expected to change search. But I think some of our other stocks, John, are infrastructure related. What's your number 2? I bet it's Nvidia.
You would be correct, sir. And of course, the reason it's up 238% this year, folks, is because of AI and the fact that the chips being demanded for AI application are universally Nvidia if you can get them. Now, you might be able to get them more easily, which still probably means a significant wait next year because the president of the United States, Joe Biden, has put a ban on exporting to China. And China does want these chips, Mark, but they can't get them. So Nvidia makes them. That means they'll sell them to somebody else, right?
That's true. And I expect Biden's tough talk on China to continue and to actually be amped up, the rhetoric to be amped up as we go into an election cycle, of course, presidential election year in 2024. Lots of folks saying, and I'm one of them that fully agrees with that in an attempt to try to go tit for tat with number 45, that Biden's expected to amp up the China rhetoric and possibly even tariff policy, which could be a good thing for U.S. demand, U.S. buyers of NVIDIA chips. And I agree, we've talked about this before, in terms of all the chip makers, I believe NVIDIA is best positioned to fulfill that demand for AI. But what's your third stock, John?
Third stock, Tesla. And a lot of folks would look at it and say, Tesla, wouldn't it be a data center that could use AI or any of the other applications? Yes, it could. But Tesla was up 100 and some odd % this year. And a lot of that because they have reoccurring revenue. Reoccurring revenue, folks, is what is manna from heaven with stocks. And the reoccurring revenue with Tesla comes from their full self-driving subscription. Note the term subscription there. So AI helps them basically remember, if you will, as a machine might remember, pull from its data sources all the things about roads and conditions and things like that. But you're paying for it. If and when you sell your Tesla, your subscription doesn't go with it. That new buyer of that used Tesla has to repurchase a subscription. So I love the reoccurring rev story here, Mark, and I love AI applications that Tesla, one of the largest data producers on earth, has.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you mentioned that, John, because it doesn't even take into account what Tesla might do when it sells that data at scale. And look, I'll wrap the AI story with just one comment, and I'm going to tease this so people tune in for more detail in 2024. But the biggest winners in my book in the AI game are not just the search. It's not just ChatGPT 5, 6, 7 and Microsoft and folks like that. It's the companies, and we'll share some of them with you in 2024. It's the companies that are developing B2B enterprise applications for artificial intelligence that will make enterprise decision-making better, faster, and more accurate. That is a massive growth sector. It is not discussed anywhere near as much as the chip makers or the search platforms, but I think it's going to be one of those companies that drives AI-based revenue in 2024, according to the Gartner report, to almost $70 billion. And by 2027, 3 short years from now, $119 billion. That's 2x 2023 AI revenue. Don't bet against the growth of data. I say that all the time.
Yeah. Surprising that a guy who co-founded BattleFin, a conference centered on data and how people can use that data to trade more effectively, among other things. Strange that you would cite data as being that important. But all right, let's talk, Mark, about Penn. And this time, Penn Gaming is not tied in with our friend Dave Portnoy. Of course, they famously departed as, I guess, frenemies, but they still have a potential to make some nice money off of Barstool Sports, does Penn Gaming, if and when Dave sells it. But Penn Gaming is up 7% today because HG Vora is invested in this casino operator. It's a big hedge fund, and now they want board seats because they say it's vastly undervalued and they're going to unlock that value. And whenever an activist shareholder comes into one of these stocks that Mark and I and Pete talk about, we pay close attention, because to the end that they actually start making progress in that direction of unlocking that value, that's a reason to be in those stocks.
Yeah, no doubt, John. And this is an area that went through explosive growth over the past few years, as we all know. And the next phase in a cycle like that, in the development of a nascent industry like sports-related betting, as state after state has legalized, is, dare I say, consolidation. We've talked a lot in the past few shows about what we anticipate to be elevated levels of M&A activity in 2024, going into an election year, led, of course, by the life sciences M&A, which we've already reported on and had, I think, some pretty good ideas even ahead of some of the news that we reported on yesterday. I think we might see gaming, sports gaming, be another beneficiary of increased M&A activity. And I think that's what Vora's outcome here may be, to either position them, improve the board, position them either as an acquirer or an acquiree. Don't know how that's going to play out, but I'm going to be watching this one very carefully.
Yeah, and also you can end up with proxy fights and the like, folks, that end up being people accumulating shares so that they can vote those shares. So that's right. Another reason to pay attention to what Mark was just saying from the legal standpoint of basically forcing votes and putting people friendly to your cause on the board. All right, Mark, let's talk about a stock that has been one of the most volatile stocks, certainly in December and maybe for the year. This was a $9 stock. It went to become an $11 stock, and that was on the 18th of December. It was $11.20. It exploded to $190 a share the next day. Now, a lot of you are going to say, well, this is a medical company, right? Yeah, it is a medical company. It's called Jin Medical. And they must have a Jin, which is like a genie, I guess, Mark, that somebody wished upon, because ZJYL, this stock exploded to the upside. And what do? They're not a biotech. They didn't cure cancer. No, they make wheelchairs and they sell them in China. So I have a feeling, Mark, that this is a lot more about a short squeeze, perhaps a legendary short squeeze, more so than it is about what their business model is and how much money they make.
Yeah, I'm not hearing anything about a sudden end of year spike in wheelchair demand in the Chinese market, although to be very candid, that's not really a sector that I pay much attention to. Look, this thing is 80% of the float in this thing is controlled by insiders, okay? And that, to me, John, is the lesson for our viewers. When you've got, and that's an important reason, break down those metrics. And by the way, we're going to be coming out with some stuff. I'm going to tease it. I hope I'm not jumping the shark, John, but we're going to be coming out next year with some features for our Market Rebellion users to see some of the curriculum vitae like this on stocks integrated into some of the existing Market Rebellion platform functionality. Very, very exciting, something I'm excited about for next year. Lots of big stuff coming your way, folks, in Market Rebellion in 2024. But that's why it's important to look at that insider holding interest level. Why is that? When 80% of the float's controlled by a small number of people, by insiders, when the stock moves and they want to move the stock, man, oh man, they can, and they often do. And yes, John, I think it's a short squeeze story as well, but this is a cautious tale, because it can go the other direction, about what happens when 80% of the float is controlled by a small number of people.
Yeah. And again, folks, 18th of December, $11.20. The 19th of December, that went to $190 on that day. And in between then and today, it was $46 a share. So it came from 190 all the way crashing back down to earth. That's that cautionary tale Mark's talking about, to now today seeing a nice pop again. But okay, when do those insiders start taking advantage of the squeeze that perhaps they created? We'll see. All right, Mark, how about this one? Neo, N-E-O, not Keanu Reeves in the Matrix, but instead, these guys have a genomics lab which manufactures a cancer test. That's pretty important stuff, right? Well, it turns out that their RADAR assay test has run afoul of a patent, at least according to one judge who agreed with the filing by Natera that had indeed occurred. And that's why Neo is down 22% today. Pretty big drop. But the judge had some mercy, and I'll let Mark take that side of the story, because the judge didn't just say, okay, can't use that test, because this is something that does save lives. But those people who are using that test, Mark, that money might not be going to Neo in the future, might it not?
Yeah, and that you nailed it, John. This was a ruling on a preliminary injunction, right, by the company alleging an infringement of their intellectual property as it relates to the technology used for these tests. Now, a preliminary injunction is a pretty high standard, because the company or the party that's seeking that has to post a bond, has to put up money. Because if they're wrong and the judge grants something without fully litigating the issues that are at play, the company being alleged that they did something wrong, that they infringed on a patent, could actually be subject to significant losses. The shareholders of Neo obviously experiencing exactly what we're talking about here. I don't think this is going to end well, because it's a very high standard for these preliminary injunctions in these cases. There appears to be, they had to put up a pretty decent amount of evidence to demonstrate that their allegations are in fact well-founded in terms of that IP infringement. So we could see this thing going even further. I would not try to buy it. I might even consider trying to short it if it bounces. But this is not, I don't think this is going to end well. I don't know for sure, but I don't think this is going to end well for Neo.
As Mark says, that bar, not the legal bar, but a legal term that he used there to grant that injunction, the judge had to see some pretty strong evidence that indeed they do have firm ground that they're standing on, and that's not good for Neo. All right, let's do a little red zone sports, Marc. And there's a guy that plays for the San Antonio Spurs, Jeremy. I'm not sure if it's Sochan or Sochan, but he has a quirky thing that he does, Marc, when he goes to the free throw line. So just a still for you that we got from the Atlantic. There he is shooting one-handed free throws. And he doesn't do this just for notoriety or anything, folks. He's actually shooting like 76% or better with that one-handed shot that he's putting up. And the fans love it. I'm sure fans in competing stadiums probably give him a hard time about that, much like they did with Wilt Chamberlain, who famously did that two-handed underhand toss, or Shaquille O'Neal, who was also a horrible free throw shooter. But 76%, almost 77%, that's not a horrible free throw shooter.
No, and look, it makes for good entertainment, right? Which is part of what drives ticket sales, part of what drives eyeballs. I was lucky enough back when I used to have an office and a place in Los Angeles. I had Laker tickets, John, like 13 rows just to the left of center court. I could see the back of Jack Nicholson's head. It was during the Kobe Bryant days. And look, they were an incredible team back then, but it was also the entertainment. It was the theater that you saw of that team that made them so unstoppable and must-watch TV. Looking forward to the second half of the NBA season in 2024.
Oh, yeah. And, yesterday, Marc and I were talking about the Timberwolves and Boston being the top two teams. San Antonio is not in that category yet, but this guy is certainly a crowd pleaser, Marc, with those one-handed free throws. All right, let's talk about a team that was expected to be a crowd pleaser, Marc, and that would be the Jets. Jets. One of your favorite teams.
That's
Marc
right.
And I have been up there in a couple skyboxes at MetLife Stadium watching the Jets play, and I must say the games were not exciting. They were expected to be this year, Marc. What with the acquisition of Aaron Rodgers, who unfortunately, after he jogged out on the field with that American flag, played 4 plays for the Jets and tore his Achilles. And he's a friend of Pete's and mine, so I'm not making fun of him, folks. But here's the tie-in. Tonight, the Jets play Cleveland. Yep. And why is that a tie-in? Because one Joe Flacco, who won the Super Bowl when he was playing for the Baltimore Ravens, was on the Jets last year. And they chose not to re-sign him this year after Aaron Rodgers went down. And there could be a host of reasons, but he's, by all accounts, a really good guy and obviously a pretty successful quarterback in the league for 17 years or something like that, Marc. Granted, 2018 was a while ago, but I mean, that's when he won the Super Bowl. But this was a guy who continues to be a 60% completion guy with a decent quarterback ranking, and he's taken Cleveland right to the edge of perhaps making the Super Bowl this year. And instead, the team that he was on last year is looking at the outside, is on the outside looking in, Marc. That's what I'm pointing out.
Yeah, well, listen, I talk a lot about must-watch games. This is one as the Jets try to show Mr. Flacco that you cannot come home again for the holidays as he tries to lead the Browns to their second playoff spot, I think, since when, John? 2002? No, I don't have that right. Do I have that right? I do have that right. Every once in a while, I get a football statistic right. So, yeah, it's going to be terrific. The Jets feeling good after their holiday performance. Of course, a game that we were watching. Jet Life Stadium is what we call it here in New Jersey, John. It's not MetLife Stadium. It's Jet Life Stadium. But really, really one to watch. Obviously, Flacco's performance has been great. Both teams plagued throughout the season with quarterback injuries. We've talked about that incessantly. But I don't know, John. My money is on the Green Machine, Jets. So I'm going to be watching as alongside all the rest of my family who are rabid Jets fans.
Well, that the simple fact is also that this guy could lead them to the Super Bowl, Mark. I don't say it's likely because the Ravens, they're not going to get past the Ravens, in my opinion. Although Deshaun Watson beat the Ravens at home in Baltimore. But this ain't Deshaun Watson playing right now. But that game, he did go 14 for 14, by the way, and beat the Ravens. But Joe is almost an impossible sign for next year. And the reason, folks, is that there's a salary cap. And Deshaun Watson eats up an awful lot of that salary cap. And he has an ironclad contract, one of the highest contracts in the league. And thus, it would be impossible, I'd say, Mark, for them to re-sign him for next year. So he could lead them to the Super Bowl. They could win the Super Bowl. And Joe Flacco could be the MVP. But if he plays next year, it won't be in Cleveland, not because he hates them, but because they don't have salary cap room. So one person's opinion, they could trade some people and create some room, Mark, but you're sure as heck not getting rid of Myles Jarrett because that guy's going into the Hall of Fame. They're already fitting him for a gold jacket, and he's only a few years in the league, so he ain't going anywhere. Mark, thank you for all the insights that you've shared. What would you leave us with as far as your wishes for the Rebel Nation, as you call them?
Well, John, I just thought, we marked these milestones the last show of the year. It's been a real pleasure. I wanted to thank you and Pete from the bottom of my heart for welcoming me into the Market Rebellion family, to have the privilege of addressing all of our viewers, this unbelievable Rebel Nation, as I do lovingly call them, this army of talented, independent traders who are determining the path of their own financial fate, which is an incredible thing. We made money this year. We lost money. That's part of it. Net we made. I'm pretty confident, people that were following UOA. And John, I know we've got so much in the works for Market Rebellion for next year, not just the book, but other things. I think people are going to be absolutely blown away. So a very happy holidays and best wishes for a happy new year from you, Pete, myself, the entire Market Rebellion team. The audience, we love you guys. We wouldn't do this without you. Have a wonderful and safe New Year's Eve.